Thank you. So I was going to do an exercise where I asked you to take out your phone and look at your calendar, but I realized asking you to take out your phone before I speak is stupid. So keep your phones away and just hold that thought. What I was going to ask you to do is to look at your calendar for tomorrow, and if you had to clear everything except for one thing, what would it be and why? Priority setting is one of the most important things that a leader does. It's one of the most important skills. My background, I'm an administrator, but I'm also a physician. My background is in clinical medicine. I'm a pediatric emergency physician. And prioritization is the hallmark of our specialty. The whole triage thing is key to what we do. But I think it's important in any field, in any organization. And I've been influenced in the last few years by a book that I read several years ago called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. That's M-C-K-E-O-W-N. I think it's the most important book, business-type book I've read ever, so I would encourage you to look at it. But essentialism is, to boil it down to a phrase, is about focusing on the most important things. Now, obviously, there's more to it, or it would be a bumper sticker instead of a book. But, and I won't go into all the details about it, but based on my experience and so on, I really boil it down to 4 elements. So I was told it was 7 ideas, but in the spirit of essentialism, I'm limited it to 4, okay? So the first one is, to paraphrase Nancy Reagan, just say no, okay? I know I'm the only boomer here probably, so you all didn't even remember who Nancy Reagan is. But anyway, and there's a little bit of this discussion in the last panel. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do when it's somebody in a position of authority asks you or when it's a personal connection, but it's also just hard for us to do. You guys are a bunch of smart, curious people. You're attracted to lots of different things, and you're high achievers, and it's very tempting to figure out how you're going to squeeze one more thing in. But no matter how many things you try to squeeze in, your time and, more importantly, your mental energy is going to be finite, and you're going to have to avoid distractions. And if success is measured by really basically 2 things, it's getting stuff done and being an expert on things. That's how you rise up the ranks, and both of those require focus. So how do you let yourself, never mind the practicalities of how do I say no to my boss, how do I say no to my wife or whoever, how do you let yourself say no? Well, when I took my new role as a hospital administrator, I had my clinical work, my research, my writing, a whole host of things, and I had to sit down and say, okay, what can I afford to give up? And the answer was nothing, which wasn't the right answer, but that was the only answer I could come up with. The way he frames it, though, in essentialism was the aha for me. What he says in there is, don't think about it as what do I have to give up or what do I have to pass on. It's what do I get to go big on. And so instead of thinking about what am I losing, it's what am I gaining. And I knew what I wanted to go big on. I wanted to go big on my new role. And that made it very easy for me to let go of a number of things that I was really struggling to let go of. The other way he frames it I like is he says, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. So let yourself say no. The second thing, which will sound contradictory, is let yourself say yes. Now, I've been getting advice my entire career, you have to say no, you have to say no, you have to focus. My career has been the furthest thing from a straight line that I can imagine. And the reason for that is because I let myself say yes at the right times. Prioritization is not about not doing things. I have not yet mastered the skill of getting somebody to pay me to not do things. It's about doing the most important things, the essential things. And so the question is, how do you know what's essential? When do you know what's essential? Do you know it when you're 3? Do you know it when you're 10? God knows you don't know when you're 16. So, it's really a lifelong process. And unless you have a direct connection to the source of all divine knowledge who's going to reveal it to you, you've got to figure it out. And that requires experimentation on the one hand, and then time for reflecting or discerning what's really essential. And that's going to require saying yes to things. The key is not to say yes in a big way. Do it in an experimental way. Do it on a trial basis. Don't make a commitment until you've tried it out and figured out, is it in fact essential? And I want to echo what somebody said about time for reflection. It's absolutely critical. I actually have in my calendar, I have blocks of time called thinking time. And I don't try to disguise it. I used to make up appointments. I have a meeting with Jeff at 3, right? And I thought, why do I do that? I want to send the message that this is important. So the first time I did it, I put in my calendar, and one of the other vice presidents came down the hall and he thought, oh, I need Mark, great, because I look at his calendar, I see he's in his office, he's in thinking time, and he walked in the office and he said, if looks could kill, I would be a dead man. I mean, you would not believe the look you gave me. He's like, what are you doing? This is my thinking time. So build that in and make time for it, because discernment is part of taking advantage of those yeses and figuring out which ones you're going to follow and when you're going to start to let go. So when you're discerning what's essential, it's most important to have a focus on what's in it for us. You need to think about it from an organizational perspective, okay? It's not about you. It's not about your functional area, your team. It's about the greater organization. So when I came to Children's in 2000, I came to be the medical director of the emergency department. And one of the most exciting things was that I was going to get to design a new emergency department, because the existing one was about 15 years old, and I'd seen my colleagues in other institutions go through this, and it seemed like a lot of fun, so I was really jazzed about it. So we started doing the planning, and I realized it might not be perfect, but it was good enough, and the new emergency department was not essential to the success of the hospital. It was not essential to our vision of making the kids in Wisconsin the healthiest in the country. And I actually got in front of the hospital leadership and argued against putting money into a new emergency department because it wasn't essential. And now here it is 15 years later, and we still have the same one. We've changed the floors and put in some new paint. But it's a matter of what's most essential, and I would have loved to do that. I'd still love to do it, but I couldn't really justify it. So you really need to take that us mentality, because as the cliche says, there's no I in team, right? Except there is. So the next thing you need to say is, what's in it for me? Because a team is really just a collection of I's. And the team can't function, the organization can't function, it can't succeed unless all of those I's are at their best. You can't succeed unless you're at your best. And that means, in my mind, and this is the one that I take most personally, it means being healthy in a global sense. It means being healthy according to the World Health Organization's definition of health, which is a state of physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being. Now, I'm not talking about work-life balance, because with all due respect to Dr. Driver and some of the others, I hate the term work-life balance. I think it was invented by an evil HR VP who tried to convince us that life is what's left over at the end of the workday. And that's crap. Life is not at odds with work. Work is part of your life, and so are a lot of other things. And so when you're thinking about what's essential, you have to think about it in that holistic way. There are things that are essential to your organization. There are things that are essential to you. And I'm not talking about the stuff that you like. Those are important. But what's really essential, what drives you, what's at your core, you have got to figure out how to prioritize it, or you're going to fail. So for me, I know what those things are. One of them is exercise. One of them is my family. And one of them is music. And those are things that I've never apologized for making time for, because I'm a better employee, I'm a better leader when I'm at my best. And if I don't do those things, I'm not at my best. And someone earlier mentioned you should be judged by the results you deliver, not the process it takes you to get there. And if I've got to go out for a run at lunch to deliver, judge me by what I deliver at the end of the day, not how I spent my lunch hour, or whether I came in a little bit late or I left a little bit early. But everybody's is going to be different. And you just have to figure out what are those core things. So let yourself say no. Let yourself say yes. Figure out what's in it for your organization, for the greater good. Figure out what's in it for you, and use that to set your priorities. And really, if you can master prioritization, the rest of it's easy, but you fit it. That's the core. That's the essence. So the two things, I would recommend that book very highly, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And then the second thing is, and don't do it when the next person's speaking either, but take out your phone later when you're done, look at your calendar, and look at next week's schedule and pick one thing. If you had to wipe your schedule clean, what's the one thing you'd keep in there, and why? Think about why. And then look at your calendar and take something off that doesn't seem to be essential and replace it with something that is. That's all I've got. Thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it.